All right, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Ricky Telg with the Center for Public Issues Education here at the University of Florida. And it's my privilege to welcome everybody to our fall Society of Agricultural Communications Scholars webinar slash panel discussion. And so today we have three individuals who will be leading the discussion with us. So typically what we do is have the group who or the individual who's leading the discussion present and then have any questions along the way. And then if there's time remaining at the end of the presentation slash webinar, then we open it up for kind of open discussion related to what's going on at your university or your unit or what have you. So we'll be here for up to an hour, no more than an hour. And the topic for today's presentation is AI in education, balancing innovation with integrity. So Austin Moore, Heather Young, and Taylor Ruth are going to be leading that discussion today. And I always leave it up to the presenters how you would like to take questions or comments, whether at the end of your discussion slash presentation or during that. So if you just let everyone know what you would prefer, I'll turn it over, I believe, to Austin. Thank you all very much for leading this discussion today.
Thank you, Ricky. Well, we actually do want to have a pretty ranging discussion today. As we talked last week, we realized we actually represent, I think, a broad spectrum of experience and use and I would say attitude towards AI. I represent the deep skeptics. I've had not great experiences with my students, particularly in the issue of just of seeding that critical thought wherever possible. But as we've talked and we talked amongst ourselves, we've had a lot of different experiences, some very useful and helpful in managing load and trying to help get some tools in front of students. So we wanted to have a conversation with y'all, not just about the tools, but also the policies in place. And I think we wanted to start out there with that piece of the conversation to get a feel for where policies are on our institutions across the board. I can kick us off here with at ABAC. We're a smaller institution and we are trying to maneuver within our Georgia system to figure out what we're allowed to do and where we're at. But even on this campus, we have a wide variety of disciplines who would like to embrace AI and those who would like to outright ban it from our campus. And so as we struggle to find policies, we're still dialing that in. And so I don't have a policy that's firm for us. We're very much on an individual basis of whether or not we're going to include in classes or not still. Um, Taylor or Heather, one of y'all want to jump in and get us where you're at, and then we'll kind of move forward from there?
Sure, I can go. Hi, everybody. My name is Taylor Ruth. I'm at the University of Tennessee, Knoxville. And I'm actually going to drop a Google Doc link here in a second once I'm done talking. We started putting together resources and links, as well as links to some of these existing policies. So if you want to go and look at these afterwards, you can. Or if you have some you want to add, we're hoping this can be a working doc that can help everybody here. But University of Tennessee has done a really nice job of putting together statements for our syllabus saying if we want to have strict use, moderate use, or open use for AI, and it has language for us. So I typically use in my class a strict use for no use of AI when we're talking about photo editing, video editing, but I also taught online classes where students don't get to interact with a lot of people and brainstorm. So I use a moderate use AI policy for those classes and teach them how to brainstorm using AI to get feedback on the messages they're developing. So that's been really helpful to have this middle ground of it doesn't have to be fully open or fully strict use. UTK also recently came out with a policy saying teachers cannot give zeros for suspected AI use since you can't really prove it. So that is new within this semester, I think. So I'm not sure if others have seen that as well. Still, what I have found, the quality of the work isn't super high to get a high grade anyway, so I don't need to give it a zero when I suspect it, but that is an official policy here at UT.
Yes, so I am Heather Young from the University of Florida, and I am within the College of Agricultural and Life Sciences, and I teach within the Agricultural Education and Communication Department. And so I'm probably one of the beginning ones of jumping on board of using AI and not banning it from student use and focusing more on the effective use of how they can incorporate AI into their brainstorming when it's acceptable. And so obviously, if the purpose of the assignment is to create an outline like Austin might share later, then obviously we don't want them using AI to build an outline. We want them to learn those skills on their own. And so it's all about being able to provide a transparent communication effort between your students and how you expect them to use the tool or how you don't want them to use the tool. And that's the mindset that I've really adopted, being that we are a very pro AI university. Some of you might have heard of the thing called HyperGator. And so we have that here, and that's one of those driving forces that we have to really embody the use of AI, but making sure that we're doing it in the responsible sense and showing our students how to responsibly use AI. And so that is kind of the policy, is that there is not a strict policy across the board, because they recognize within our AI Squared Center that we use AI very differently depending on our discipline or the use case scenario for the specific course or project that we're working on. And so their broad statement is that it just needs to be done so in responsible and ethical manner. And so then it's up to the professors individually to create their own policies that they want to use for their AI policy within their syllabus. One of the links that'll be in that document that Taylor will share later is a Google Doc that's been shared across the country of different AI policies and examples of policies that have been incorporated into other professors' syllabi. And so that's a working document. You'll see that there's spots for forms to be able to submit your statement if you feel like you would like to share your statement with the rest of the group in that doc. But that was a great resource for us here at UF to be able to get started with seeing what other professors are doing and how they're writing their policies.
No, I think that gives you a bit of a spectrum of where we're coming from. Does anyone out there have a rather novel or unique approach at your institution you'd want to share?
So Amanda Bowling, I'm at Ohio State. And so this past summer, Ohio State has established an initiative for all of our undergraduates so that by 2029, so that would be starting with our incoming freshmen right now, that all of our undergraduate students will be graduating AI fluent. And so they are in the process right now of each undergraduate major has to develop a roadmap and the ways in which students will engage in courses to become AI fluent and meet expected learning outcomes that have been set by the university for AI. And so we are essentially moving full steam ahead. The university is providing us all of the Google platforms that are AI supported, are also providing us Copilot. And what else are they? And then, so those are all of the free, the quote unquote free. We all know nothing's free at the university, right? But those are the free to use platforms. But then they are even providing us paid platforms where you can develop your model, where you can do much more intense AI pieces with your students under more of paid platforms. But as far as moving full steam ahead, we are I would say very advanced in providing professional development for our faculty, or at least starting to this semester, and are moving our students towards, you don't have to have it in every class, but we are moving towards most of your classes will have it in some form or fashion.
Do you care to express your particular opinions or preferences in that? I mean, is it causing any stress amongst your staff?
So a little bit. When one good thing though is when we heard this initiative, our department was very ahead of the game. And okay, if we're going to do this, let's develop a task force. Let's develop a group of faculty that are comfortable and ready to push this forward, with some of our more skeptics on there too, to help kind of balance the scales. Anytime we have that new innovation. And so we're moving at a pace where we're very comfortable. We're actually next week going to start our AI workshop series for our own faculty and graduate students, to increase their confidence level around it. So as far as our department, we're moving well with it. And personally, I'm very excited. I've actually dropped AI into my research methods and design course for our graduate students, and am having really good reflective and metacognitive results from it. So I'm excited, and so glad to hear what everyone's going to share today.
Anyone else? Okay. Well, I might have us pivot a little bit, and obviously how the students engage with this is one thing. The next piece of that is, as a faculty member in that teaching load, there are certainly tools that individuals are using. Heather, I might, if you don't mind, call on you to kind of talk us through some of the ways that you're using tools that are helping you with a very different load.
Yeah, so I am responsible for teaching the two largest enrollment courses within our department. And so my oral communication course is 135 students with 3 or 4 TAs, depending on the year. And then I have 245 to 250 students in my research and business writing class. And with that, I also manage 12 TAs for that class. So it's like a class within a class. And so for what I have developed and pulled in upon learning more and more about AI along the way is in my oral communication class, I use YellowDig, and you'll see that linked in there as a resource in that worksheet. But YellowDig is an online communication platform. I explain it to my students like academic Facebook, and they get it. It's just sharing and combining what you're learning in class with what you're seeing in real life, and continuing that conversation beyond just lecture time. And the AI side of that is they have a network graph that it's literally, if you've ever done a network analysis of where you have people's pictures and you have lines connecting everybody to see who works with who and who talks to who, it does that instantly within a click of a button. And so you can quickly see who's not engaging in the conversation and reach out to those students, where before I would have to rely on the TA. I would have to sit there and scroll through my Zoom screen and see who's got their camera off and who hasn't contributed in class. And it was much more time consuming and not anywhere near as effective to be able to quickly assess who's engaged and who's not engaged in the class. And then students also feel like they're seen and they're not just a number in a larger class where you don't see 15 faces every week. You see a different group of students. And then in that class, I also focus on career ready skills. And so we do mock interviews and we do a resume. And so I use the Quincia program that UF has kind of developed into its own version of Quincia, but Quincia is available across the country for universities to incorporate that into their career connections or their career resource centers. And so Quincia is a robot that students can do an interview with. And after they upload their resume and the job posting for it, it will create conversation and questions like you would get asked in an actual interview. And then the computer analyzes your micro expressions, your eye contact, your excitement or your tone in your voice, the use of filler words, your words per minute, that kind of information that really helps students fine tune their interviewing skills. And it's all through AI. So they don't actually talk to a human being. So that helps most of the time with the nerves to be able to get students over that slump of not really knowing how to answer or what kind of questions might come up in an interview. It also does a resume analysis, so it'll give flags because of it being an ATS system. It can read the resume and give it a score for its ATS score. So that applicant tracking system that most of the employers that are doing job searches use to screen resumes for that first step of a search. And so when students get that feedback, they realize, oh, my pretty Canva resume is not compatible with ATS. I probably shouldn't use that if it's going to be a mass hiring event. And so that's a real eye opener for some students when they think they have a great resume, but it's useless when the computer can't read it. And so that's briefly what I do in my oral communication class. And then in my research and business writing class, that's the one with the 250 students in it. And we are a Gordon Writing Rule course, so they have to have their 6,000 words through the semester. And we were trying to find a way to be able to improve the quality of the feedback that students were getting, try to get their assignments graded a little bit faster, and turn back around with the quality and meaningful feedback. And we found this tool called PackBack. And both of the platforms that I've mentioned, they're unfortunately you have to pay for them. They're not open access, they're not free resources. But PackBack has a discussion board that scores students' posts on their curiosity level. So they get a curiosity score in that. It assesses them for 4 different criteria, and the main part of it is that curiosity factor. And how curious is this question? How unique is this question? Is it the simplified low-hanging fruit that everybody sees in the traditional Canvas discussion board where it's like, yes, that's a great idea. I agree. I couldn't agree more. You don't get points for that kind of stuff in PackBack. It forces you to have a more critical conversation and a more unique conversation. And so in order to be able to get those scores, to be able to get full credit for that discussion. And then in their writing assignments, they have the option, as soon as they get 20 words written, it starts generating feedback on the rubric that is incorporated into that assignment. It'll start giving students suggestions like, hey, your clarity can be improved on, or you're not really touching on the ethics side of this, where it'll start feeding in prompts to help students kind of get over that writer's block. And there's an option to be able to start a chat with the AI writing assistant that's within PackBack. And that really helps students, where we've all been in that spot where we sit there in front of a blank Word document and we're like, what's the first word? Just got to get that first word down and then we can start writing. And so that AI assistant will ask student questions and the student would respond, and then it'll follow up with another question. And so the nice thing about the PackBack AI assistant is that it doesn't give them the answer. They can't copy and paste anything from what they got out of that conversation into their Word document. It has to be their own words. And so it makes them think, and it doesn't just give them the answer. So I appreciate that side of it. And I think the one thing that I've recently done here is I've had a traditional issue with students grasping the concept of a problem statement. And so even though I say, what is the problem? Who is it a problem for? And why is it a problem? We still get solutions thrown in there. We still get questions instead of statements. And so I built a chatbot, a very simplified version of a chatbot to guide students through the process of writing a problem statement. So I uploaded a list of potential science issues that would be acceptable for my class. And then I walk them through the specific criteria of what a problem statement incorporates. And then it guides the student, says, okay, let's work on a draft. And so it's got to get a little bit more fine-tuned, because even though I tell it not to give them a problem statement, every now and then you can talk it into giving you a problem statement. So that's one of the challenges that we'll all have to encounter, is if you build something like that, it's not going to be foolproof right from the start. It's going to take a lot of work to get it to a point of almost perfection. But that one was really well received with students. I did a survey afterwards and asked them what their thoughts were on the fact that I gave them a chatbot to be able to work on an assignment. And they thought, for the most part, there were a couple in the environmental sciences, marine science area that it's to be expected to be your skeptics on using the program and not wanting to support it. But they openly thought that it was encouraging that faculty were adopting the use, but also showing us how to use it correctly and not just saying we can't use it or you can use it, but actually being intentional about how you can use it correctly. So that was something that was true, honest student feedback, and I really appreciated that. So I'll stop talking and let someone else share their experiences if they would like. And of course, you guys can always ask questions.
Thank you, Heather, for talking about that, because I know you've got a lot of different applications of AI in your classes. I invited Dr. Blake Colclasure to come talk with us today as well, because when I told Dr. Telg that I could help out with this, I was actually volunteering Dr. Colclasure. And for those of you who don't know, he's also my husband, so it's very easy to volunteer him for things. At UT, we had a pretty large AI fellowship initiative this past year that Blake, myself, and a team of faculty applied for. Blake is leading this grant, and we ended up receiving it, and we've been implementing it this past few weeks. And by we, I also mean Blake. So I'm going to let him talk about what we've been doing with integrating AI into a public speaking class.
All right, hi everyone. It's good to be here. So as Taylor mentioned, we got a grant that was kind of sponsored by the university with the intent to have faculty integrate more AI within their courses, similar to Amanda, Ohio State, University of Tennessee is also trying to get ahead of the game and to encourage faculty to teach AI to improve students' AI literacies. So this process was about almost a year long before integrating AI in my ALEC 240 course, which is Effective Oral Communications, basically a public speaking course. But over the summer, we met with other university teams to develop how we're going to integrate AI. And I really like the framework that they used to encourage us to think about our integration. So their framework had us think about functional literacy, so how students are actually using the AI platform and gaining the skills to use it effectively. And also ethical literacy, to think about if they're using AI in an ethical manner. And then last was evaluative literacy. So to be able to actually truly evaluate the outputs from AI to figure out if that's worth using or if they need to make modifications to the AI output. So in this course, we kind of developed like a three-pronged approach to integration. We had students use generative AI to help assist them in developing their speaking outlines. So pretty standard speaking outline for public speaking. And then whenever a student provides or gives a speech, we usually have ops and GEMS feedback, so opportunities for improvement, and then GEMS things that worked well. So we just implemented that in a survey, and then we actually had AI summarize all the peer responses. So that way, instead of students getting back like 18, 20 peer-reviewed slips with different comments, we just provided them one summary, which was probably a little bit easier for them to digest and understand, as well as see trends from their peers. And then kind of the biggie was the use of Ovation, which is very similar to like VR speech, if anyone's familiar with that. So essentially we had the Oculus Quest headsets, the 360 headsets. And then Ovation is a platform where students can basically practice their speeches in a headset, talking to a virtual audience. So it could be like a hotel room or a classroom. And then the AI is able to provide questions back to the students after their speech through the avatars. It looks at pace, filler words, articulation, eye contact, a whole bunch of different features. So we implemented that this semester as well.
So that lays out a few areas for us. And we'd like to raise to those of you in attendance where we might go from here. We have a couple of thoughts amongst us as we've talked. We have brought up the idea of depending if we had a very small group, we thought we'd just have a long-ranging conversation. If we had a very large group, we thought we might break out into breakout rooms. As of course is the case, then we have kind of middle of the road pack here, so we could go either way. A few other areas that we've mentioned of talking, of course, the use of within our faculty service roles and advising roles. We didn't have much conversation on this, but I really have some curiosity about what people are encountering in terms of use of AI within research and within our field there. I think that's an interesting conversation to have. But I guess I would start with considering we have about 35 minutes left. Would you all like to break out into some individual rooms, or would we like to just carry on with large topics amongst the larger group? Any opinions? I think Christopher expresses it for us all. Very good. All right. Well, let me ask there, and I'll share a story there. I am the bit of the deep skeptic in terms of this, and admittedly, I'm in an enviable situation, especially considering those class loads, Heather. We're a smaller institution, fairly large AgCom program, but I still within our classes, I know every name of every student in my fairly small classes that I deal with. What I have been frustrated with there is seeing students who very quickly want to seed their own thought of even just trying to look for a synonym. They're just jumping on as quick as they can. Not all of them, but those who do, that's where I have concerns. I did have a colleague challenge me about 2 years ago. Colleague at another institution, we were discussing the challenge of keeping up with reference letters. And this colleague suggested they do use it. They've trained AI on their own voice and using those there. And so I thought, I'll give this a small try. And without training it on myself, I fed in a prompt to chat, and it fed back something far too close to what I would have written that week. Enough so that it annoyed me well enough that I turned around and wrote probably the best reference letter I've ever written for a kid, all on my own. I don't see that pushback necessarily from my students. They're happy to replace themselves. And as we've seen in other industries, that entry-level job, the challenge of putting someone in there to gain the experience to then go forward where they might use these tools professionally, I'm a bit scared of it. So with that, instead of ranting on, I'll be quiet. But with those being said, I would challenge someone to tell me about either a challenge that you have and that you're concerned with, the conflict you're dealing with, or man, prove me wrong, convince me this is the tool to aim for the future.
This is not addressing your prompt exactly, but it was to something you said. We're like, oh, I don't want to be replaced. Right? And why is that the conversation? Your job is not going to be replaced by AI, but it can be augmented. Right? It's like, and we talk about this it's actually Study AI. So it's like kind of how to use it for professional decision makers, right? So like forecasters, emergency managers, those types of folks. How do you find the right team, right? What is the equivalent of your like doing dishes and laundry at your job that you don't need to be doing, right? Like you don't want to have more of. And like, how do we make sure that you have the time to actually like connect with students and like be innovative in your classroom and do the really cool things? And so it's not replacing, it's augmenting. But we can't do that if we don't have the conversation of what is it good at? What are we good at? What is it bad at? And what are we bad at? Right. And so staying on top of those discussions, it's like coming to be we use this in the National Academy as well, the human AI team, right? Where our shared goals, where our strengths and weaknesses. And I think that's where I've gone to is like research, like working. And so I have a kind of a different role too, where spent the last 4 years at a like National Research Center. So really focused on student mentoring around graduate education. And now coming back into a university setting, I'm at the University of Illinois. And so thinking like, how do you use it as a tool and where is it good? And like, there's a lot of stuff, like I submitted a proposal to USDA like a couple days ago. That was really helpful for that stuff. I'm like, we don't need to have this to be really perfectly strong writing. A lot of this is just an exercise, right? That's never going to be published. It's just like my student mentorship plan. Like, here's the ideas of what I want to do. Can you format this better than I'm doing? Because I need to move on. Like my data management plan. Here's the data I have. Here's the sources. Can you pull from the 50,000 templates at USDA on data management plans to make this look a little bit more like that? and then go through and read it again. Like, okay, yep, got it. There are things that we don't need to be spending time on that are just like very performative in our jobs, right? So like that type of stuff could be automated. So you can think more about the ideas that should go into that proposal. What do you really want to do? How would you cultivate a really cool experience? And so it's like, that's where I'm at. It's like, how can we find those right things and not replace, but then augment to get cool new levels?
Can I follow up with you though? Because certainly for the people who are mid-career, the professional who's ready to do those things.
Yeah.
But in terms of our students, so stepping out who need to gain that first experience, it seems if I'm at a small organization and I need a quick press release, the things that I need students to develop skills and get reps doing, why would they not just outsource this to a tool there versus hiring our student? And I would say within our role, now we're an undergrad only institution, so I'm not dealing with grad students, but how many things that you have grad students doing as they're developing and stepping into the role could be replaced by AI and reducing the need for those grad student roles. And I don't know, but I worry about the development in that space.
I would say, kind of push back on your comment, if we are producing students and undergrads and grad students that can do things that are easily replaced by current large language models, we're ill-serving them. Right? Like if there are things that could be easily replaced by ChatGPT right now, we did not prepare them well. Right? Like your only ability is to write a strong paragraph. You're like, holy crap, that's not good. Like we, for $50,000 or more, should probably be able to provide a little bit more than that. And so idea is like, can we make students who are like, hey, I have enough of the ideas and the systems that I could create 12 paragraphs. Sometimes it took someone to do one. And they're all thoughtful and interesting and catchy. I know my audience. I like focus on different things, not the like clarity of writing things. And so like, what is the difference between you could do this analogy back to the computer, right? Where I have perfect handwriting, right? I could write, I don't, I have terrible handwriting. You know, but idea is like, I could just type this, I could dictate it, right? It saves me time. The skill isn't handwriting, right? Even though we could have that replaced, it's like we just augment it to new levels. We can do a lot more things. It's not that you have to walk down to the library and find like encyclopedia. Like we didn't lose things with that skill, right? It just means we could do more things. Like you could have 50 citations in a paper where you probably would have 12 before and have more thought. So like, it's not that it's taking your skills, it just changes what they are in some ways.
That's fair. Do we have others who want to chime in there?
I always, starting out, anytime we use AI for the first time in a new class, I always talk to the students about how the model works, how the model was trained, how the model works, what its base knowledge was, because depending on, I mean, where it was trained, it could very easily be pulling from Reddit. And emphasizing that piece to students makes them realize that it's not the magic box they think it is. And then what I emphasize to students is you still have to be the expert in the room. And what we look to use AI for is how can it help when you get stuck? How can it help save you 5 to 15 minutes in your day on a task? How can it, for example, new grad students starting to just think about their research kind of inquiry line or potential thesis topic or potential study topic for, that first study for our doc students, and have it create search terms for you. And then you need to go in and analyze the responses it gives you. And I think that's where we need to be spending our time with our students, is having them critically think through the responses it's giving you, teaching them to challenge the AI, teaching them where biases and assumptions lie in the AI, asking the AI to identify those biases and assumptions. That's where the learning occurs. And that's what's really fascinating. If you can also get the AI to hallucinate or fail early so the students see it, that reframes how they use it. It becomes much less of oh, I need to write this paper, so I'm just going to hop on there and do it, because they've seen how it can break. And so it is really, I always use the term, you still got to be the expert. let the model do some of that lifting for you, but you've got to be the expert.
Yeah, I think you made some really good points there, Amanda, because in my class that I mentioned where they could use AI, when I told them they could, they actually kind of shut down and they're like, what do you mean I can use it? Because they'd only heard like, don't use it, or they were just using it to write the papers. But training them how to use it is so important because it's not going away and they're currently just using it as like Google or to write documents for themselves, but it can do so much more than that. So training them how to do that, I think, is really, really important for us. And then the idea of like showing them how it can fail. I just wanted to share what one of our colleagues did here, Tyler Granberry, who teaches ag education. So he had taught a lesson on creating lesson plans for his students. And then he actually had AI create a lesson plan, but didn't tell his students this. Had the students then critique the lesson plan as a group. They all discussed it, talked through it. Then he's like, okay, yeah, those are all really good critiques. This was made by ChatGPT. And the students were like, oh, okay, well, I'm not going to use that then for my lesson plan. So I think that's one thing, you know, we could think about incorporating. Austin and I were talking about, like, you could have it write a press release and have our students critique it and see like, okay, I can do better than this. So having them see those failures, I think, is a really, really helpful way to handle that as well.
Yeah, I just want to underscore a lot of the points that Taylor and then Amanda just made. And it's also, we have this analogy with chess, where when chess experts were trying to beat the computer, right? It was like the people who were good on their own that could, like, you know, compete with the computer forever, and then finally the computer got better. They didn't stop like improving at chess. They made new teams, right? So there'd be new experts where like, can you and a computer work together in competition? So essentially a human AI team. And it's like the people who were perfect, just humans on their own, were not the people who then were winning with the computers. It's like different types of thinking. It's like, so you know all these strategies, I can disrupt some of these norms. I didn't just memorize a bunch of rules. I could be more creative, right? Because I have different skill sets like you could leverage a database for. And so like people then continue to get better at this because they're able to team, not just like continue to memorize. So I think there's like new heights we could hit too.
Yeah, I
Actually,
just wanted
go ahead.
I wanted to add on what Dr. Bowling and Taylor mentioned. And in my class, what I did, like for one of my classes, I do allow the students to use AI, but at the beginning of class, I had them like, you know, find out the objective of my course. So I told them, no, this is my syllabus. So go online. You can use ChatGPT, you can use Copilot, whatever you want to use. Find out the objective of this course and see what those platforms are going to tell you. So each one of them had a different one. And I was like, okay, so let's talk about that. So that was really good for them to know that different platforms are pulling the description of the course from different places. And I said, okay, look at the source. Where is the source? And like it was mentioned before, like some of them say, oh, this is really pulled out from Iowa State. This one, I don't know where it came from. And everybody in the classroom had a different response. So that did help the students to appreciate that, yes, they can use AI, but it doesn't mean that it's accurate, because we're able to check that the same question, but each one of them had different responses and different sources depending on where that information came from.
So one thing that I have that I'd like, I guess, to ask the group, especially Amanda and Heather, since you've been implementing some of this in larger courses. One thing I did not expect was after I create all these lesson plans and assignments that required students to use AI, there were a few students who had serious concerns about being required to use AI, including environmental concerns where they just didn't want to contribute to some of the environmental issues from AI, as well as moral concerns with like privacy and things like that. So with these like two students out of all the students I've taught, I ended up giving them alternative assignments. But I didn't know if you had any experience with working with students who were very reluctant to use AI when it's a required piece of your course.
So around the privacy and the data usage, we are only allowed within our courses to use what is approved by the university, and thus the data is held by the university. Same goes for all of our research. And then, oh, apparently my cat is going to join the AI conversation too. And I had one student who was pretty reluctant, but how I developed the AI usage for the research methods and design class, because essentially one student was like, well, I don't want to use it because I want to do the research process myself. And I threw my hands up and I'm like, awesome, great, do that. But I was like, follow along. What we do is we do a weekly AI activity where I have kind of a target that we're working on, whether it's maybe finding literature or maybe it's seeing what it would do around like synthesizing an article versus summarizing an article. So they're kind of gauging a difference in prompt writing. And honestly, the best one we've had was just how do you use it as a study tool? They never thought about how to have it develop study guides or write example exam questions. Or the best one was, can you tell me a bedtime story about ex post factos research? That was the coolest thing I've ever heard. But what I told her, I'm like, you don't have to use it outside. You can, it's certainly up to you, but just do the in-class activity. But when you're writing your literature review and doing your framework and all that, do that on your own if you'd like. But see where you as the student can maybe find some extra time where it can help you out, or explore where you can. I actually encouraged her to be a bully and be mean to the AI, and kind of engage it that way. The other, I have never had a student with concerns around the environmental issues. We do have several faculty that have kind of addressed it that way. One piece that I want to emphasize, that I've talked to about with our faculty that do have that concern, is I totally understand. I totally get where you're coming from. It is a concern. The bad thing is the data centers are there regardless, and it's getting used regardless. If we teach our students how to write prompts properly, they will use it in shorter capacities. And so that's where I try to approach it from that standpoint, is if they're going to use it, let's teach them how to write prompts to get quicker responses and use less energy that way.
Yeah, those are all excellent points, Amanda. I was lucky enough to be able to get a tour of our Navigator facility, which is something that is absolutely cool, amazing, awesome, all of the adjectives that you can use to describe something that's really exciting. One thing that we learned in that process is the water that they use to cool this specific program or computer is all a closed circuit. It's all a closed loop. So they're not losing water. They're not doing evaporative cooling. They're using the same water that they started with, and it's just in a continuous loop. And so now knowing that conversation, that information, when a student comes to me and says that I don't want to use this because it uses up too much water, again, to Amanda's point, regardless of whether you want to support it or not, it's not going to change the fact that others are supporting it and using it. And your one use, unfortunately, isn't going to make that much of a difference. But we also now have this ability to explain the different processes that are going in and being put in place to be able to be more conscious about how the water is used. And so it's not new water every cycle. And so that's one of the biggest things. The other thing I remind them is I ask them if they watch Netflix. They're like, yeah, that's all I get for TV. And I'm like, guess how your suggested watching list gets created? Oh, that makes sense. Now I get it. And so then they're just like, okay, well, maybe what I am not wanting to do in this class is small p's on the grand scheme. When you think about it, when you do a Google search now, you see that that's the first thing that comes up is that. And that's, you can't have it not do that as far as I am aware. There's no setting to turn that off. Maybe Austin knows. But that, go ahead.
Well, not a setting, but you can add -AI to your search and it will take that prompt off.
Okay.
But
That's
yes,
cool.
I have searched for hours to shut it off, and you can't.
To try and shut it off, right?
Yeah.
Because what are students doing? They're taking a summary piece, and that's what they're using as their answer. They're not necessarily going that extra step. Again, I don't remember who shared it already, but checking the validity and the reliability of the sources that it's pulling from. Do they actually exist? It's getting better about that, but you still find fallacies out there. And then the other side of it is the one biggest pushback that I had gotten was a marine science student said that she didn't want to use it because of the data centers, solar panels in the ocean were warming the temperature of the ocean. I can't argue with that. I can't compete with that. I mean, it's a reality. You put something that reflects light in the water, it's going to heat up the water. That's how we heat our swimming pools. So yes, okay, but that also powers multiple other sites. So that's a conversation that I don't think you're ever going to have the 100% solid answer where they're not going to have anything to refute. But at the same time, there's that value in hearing what their concerns are. You're not immediately dismissing it. And I think that's where the real value and transparency happens, is when you acknowledge the fact that they have concerns about it, and you don't have to justify them, but at least hearing them makes the student's voice feel heard. So.
Mhm. Christopher had his hand up. Chris.
Yeah, and I think the other point is that a lot of those arguments about environmental effects of AI are non-unique to other technology. A Google search is not carbon neutral. We're like, to run the internet requires a ton of resources and data centers and all of these things. And so it's like acknowledging that AI is making us think about some things that are unique issues, but some of these have been issues for a long time. We've had ethical and privacy concerns around data and issues with research for decades, like if not since the beginning of research. And so it's like, I love that you're concerned about this, and I love this stand. Go deeper, right? Like if you have an issue with AI's energy, think about what it took to make your laptop and your phone and all those rare metals and where those come from and those types of things. So like, let's think about the environmental impact of science. Let's have a good conversation. Let's do it. Let's not make it like it's not just one technology. There are things that are unique about it that are going potentially to whole new other levels, but like, yeah, let's get into it. Let's see about the ethics of pulling all this data and stuff before. How do we have about that with medical specimens? There are a lot of huge ethics of like where our studies come from on genetic data and things like that. And so like trying to make it a bigger conversation than like a specific one about the tool, I think has also been helpful for me.
Amanda.
Yeah, so around the other piece around data and privacy is I talk to students about the difference between just the open chat and then a temporary chat, and that the temporary chat won't include whatever, like let's say a student wants to drop their literature review in and have AI review it for conciseness or am I potentially missing any literature that I don't have in here? If you just drop it in that open chat, that document then gets dropped into that AI's future training knowledge base. You can open up a temporary chat, drop that document in, and then that document will not be put into the training knowledge base for the next iteration of that model. So I talk to students about that too, about that you do have those options. Problem with the temporary chat is it's temporary. The second you close it, it's gone forever. But it does provide another kind of response to a very legitimate concern around data and privacy, and then students opening themselves up for plagiarism by putting their work into the model itself. So I do kind of talk to them about temporary chat options. And then if you're in ChatGPT, if they are in the temporary chat, I tell them, because ChatGPT is the only one that will do this, but if you're in Copilot, you can move over to the ChatGPT model, and it will still do this. I have them tell the model to create a PDF of their entire conversation, both their prompts and the AI's responses, and they can download that conversation, and that way they have it and they still have the security of a temporary chat. So that is one way to talk data and privacy with students.
One other piece that I add into the conversation when there's that pushback about the privacy and the security of the data is I really encourage them to use we have if you don't notice, the trend with Florida is we have Gator everything. And so we have Navigator that lives within HyperGator. And so Navigator is like our version of ChatGPT, but you can pick from 23 different models that students have access to. And the benefit of using the GPT version within Navigator is that it stays on our servers. It's that closed network. So like what Amanda was sharing with that temporary chat option is kind of similar with what we use with Navigator, is that it's there. Yes, it has the memory. So it'll remember previous conversations, or you can build that into its learning memory. But it's a closed system. It's trained. So anything that's already being added to, or the students are adding to it, is not going out into future responses. And so that's one thing that is a little more reassuring for some of the students that are concerned about their personal thoughts or their own work getting put out there for the whole world to be able to access, is that that's encouraged to use the Navigator, or again, like Amanda commented on, is Copilot. So if you're a Copilot university, you have that secure mark. And so the data has to be treated on your institutional agreement for how they can use the data that goes into there. And so that usually protects some of the students. But again, to Amanda's point that she had made about teaching them to be effective in their prompting, so you have less iterations to get that desired response. One of the slogans that I kind of reiterate to my students is that if you're AI prompt proficient, then you're environmentally smart. And so being able to kind of phrase it with the, yes, you're not fully embodying all of the environmental save the environment side mindset, but it's also reiterating the point that the more proficient you are, the better your results will be for the first try, and then you won't have to continually reprompt it to get to that desired response. That's what I've got.
Heather, can I ask, just to follow up on that, you said 23 models that are available to students. What are y'all doing institutionally to, educate students as to what those different models are best for? And what are you hearing from the students in terms of, are they really seeking amongst them, or are they finding a comfort space? And like, give us a little more on that.
Yeah, they're working on getting a fact sheet put together to make it available for all of the students and not just within these specific AI communities that we have. But what they're working on is they make all the different models available, being that there's some that you can do with restricted data, there's some that you can process sensitive data, and then there's open data. And so now they've gotten to where they have those tags right next to the name of the model when the students select that model. So if it's someone that's using it for just a typical class assignment, they're hoping that the professors that are encouraging students to use these models are saying, select the ones that are open data, because they take less power to run. And so that's the other option of where they're kind of making it in different silos for saving the restricted and sensitive data for those more specific files. But again, reiterating, you don't want to put everybody's individual health information into the system, but they've built them to be able to use the health profiles to be able to train some of those health and performance students in some of the simulated situations instead of having actual people to practice on. So those are some of the models that they have that are available. And then there are students that they will go in and they will only use GPT-0, and that's all that they'll use because that's what they know on the outside of the world. I personally really enjoy using Llama. I didn't know Llama was a model until I started playing around with Navigator. And so that's one that I personally think works well. And so there are other areas that the AI Squared Center is working on to kind of encourage more of this AI knowledge and awareness within Navigator. And they're doing AI course designations. And so there's 4 or 5 categories. I can't remember. Dr. Telg, don't tell anybody I didn't remember it. But there's like 10% or less of your class is one of the categories, 20 to 30%, and then 40 to 50, and then use AI, I think, is the one where you're building something using AI, and that's like the core component of the class. And so my class is in the process of being designated for the Enable AI. And so that's the 10% of your content is related to, in some facet, AI use, and being able to show students not just talking about AI and how you can use it, but actually having that built into the assignments that they're using. And so that's another area where they're working on being able to advocate for the appropriate uses and the different uses of AI. And that's where some of that's coming into play, is to how do you pick which one to use.
Well, we have about 5 minutes until the top of the hour. Are there other questions from individuals we have who may not have spoken yet? Okay, hearing none. Any last words from the group, the panel, before we close today, or any other persons related to Taylor? Go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to thank everybody for engaging in the discussion today. And Ricky, once this is done, I'll send you the link that we created so it can get sent out to the group. And like
Yeah.
I said, people can feel free to add to it as they see fit. So hopefully this can become a resource that we can use and continue to use in the future.
That's great. Yes, we do have all the videos for our SACS webinars on our Pi Center website. I'll be sending this to everybody, the link, and then as you can, Taylor, go ahead and send that to me in the next day or so. We'll get that sent out along with a link to the video, but it's archived there as well. Does anyone have any updates or points that you'd like to bring up that might be of interest to the group? Things going on at your university real quick. We have about two minutes or so. Austin?
Just a quick reminder that for ACE conference, our deadline for papers is going to be coming up after the first of the year, but those calls are out. We should be sending out a second call here fairly quickly. We'd love to see you all in Montana this year.
For those who don't know, ACE is Association for Communication Excellence, ACE, and it is made up a lot of the communications professionals and academics for land grant and public institutions, as well as governmental agencies as well, and beyond. So, and also for those of you who are students, there's a student membership as well. Let me know. I was a past president of ACE, so I can get you all hooked up with all that information as well. The National Ag Communication Symposium will be coming up in February. The calls for papers have been in and submissions already in. So those of you who submitted papers and posters and things, and you'll be hearing about that fairly soon, probably sometime in November, for that meeting coming up in February. Well, with that, we are not doing a monthly webinar series. Taylor, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I just had one quick announcement. We are actually going to be adding a new non-tenure track position here at UT that I believe is going to have a comm leadership focus. So master's degree is required, PhD is preferred. Blake is actually going to be the search chair for that position. I think it's going to open in January. So if you have any students who are interested in coming to Tennessee, please send them our way. So that should, like I said, should be posted late January, I think.
Great. All right. Any other announcements? If not, we'll see you in sometime in the spring. We haven't set a date for the next webinar for SACS. And if you want to reach out to anybody on the list in between time, give me a call, email me, and I'll send stuff out to the whole group, whole list there. Thank you all very much. Thank you for our panelists who led the conversation on AI in education. Thank you all. Bye.